seems like the theme of the morning is questions. And I'm not going to change that. Because over the next few weeks, that's what we're going to do. We're going to just ask a bunch of questions. And we're going to do it through the eyes of, how many of you like crime dramas? Let me see your hands. You like crime? I love crime dramas. I will turn every station until I can find one. But you know who my favorite is? Now, consider how old I am, all right? Perry Mason. Woo, how many of you know who Perry Mason is? If you don't, go Google him. He's quite a character. But what Perry does is he gets witnesses on the stand and he gets the truth out of them. He's always looking for the truth and he's looking for justice. He's not looking for liars and smart aleck answers. And so that's what he does. And the amazing thing is he wins every case. So what we're going to do is we're going to put this man Jesus that we've been singing about, we're going to put him on the witness stand. There's a movie years ago called A Few Good Men. Can anybody tell me what the quote is from that movie? Come on, louder. You can't handle the truth. Well, Jesus is up here and he's saying, can you handle the truth? Because that's what we're going to be seeking. We're going to be looking for the truth. We're going to be looking at the truth through several different questions, and we're going to do it in different facets. And this morning, well, let me ask, how many of you have questions that you really want to ask Jesus? I do. I got a whole bunch. And I'm going to start with, why are there mosquitoes? You know, there's questions that weigh on our mind. I know that. We all have them. And we'd love to ask Jesus and get the answers that is the truth. Because in our culture today, we can ask these same questions and we're going to get answers all over the place. But most of them, 99.9% probably, will not be the truth. Because Jesus said, I am the... Oh, that got weak. Try that again. I am the... He is the truth. Truth is not a concept. Truth is not a statement. Truth is, and the answer is always Jesus, right? So I'm going to pose some questions that are, the goal of these questions is to take us into a deeper walk in our discipleship with Jesus. So folks, over the next month, I'm going to ask you to dream big and pray hard, because that's what's going to take for us to get the understanding we need so that we can become more like him. That's the discipleship, more like Jesus. So as we're beginning this new series today, we're going to see how Jesus speaks to answer these questions. And these are questions that we're going to talk about that are part of our everyday life. These aren't theological questions. These are not spiritual questions. These are everyday life questions. But you know what's so neat? We have one life. We don't have a spiritual life, and we don't have an emotional life. We don't have a psychological life. We have a life. And the Word of God speaks to it even today, when many are crying out that it's obsolete and it's outdated. But we're going to see how that does not happen. These are the questions I've been asked over my, 15, 16 years now here at Southport Heights. These are questions I've heard through the years. Some I've been asked in different ways, but it's a general question that we're going to look at. Now, you remember the saying, I first heard it from James Dobson, but I don't think it was original with him, that more is taught than caught. Did I get that right? More is caught than taught, right? I can teach you and teach you and teach you, but it don't matter a hill of beans if you don't catch it, right? But if you watch me walking down the street and I stumble in some way, you caught that. And you'd make sure the elders knew about it, wouldn't you? More is caught than taught. So remember that as we go through this series. I want to start in verse 7 of Mark chapter 3, and we're just going to stay in that chapter today. And we're going to look at the life of Jesus, the public and private life. And we're just going to answer a question today. Start in verse 7. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to a lake. Now that was the Lake of Galilee, or the Sea of Galilee, or it's called Lake Gennesaret in some places. And there was a large crowd from Galilee that followed. When they heard about all that he was doing, many people came to him from Judea, Jerusalem, Idumea, and the regions across the Jordan around Tyre and Sidon. Because of the crowd, he told his disciples to have a small boat ready for him to keep the people from crowding him. For he had healed many, and those with diseases were pushing forward to touch him. Now, I want to start by just saying, there's an interesting word in that little passage. Crowd. Do you ever think of crowd as an interesting word? Do you ever think about who's in a crowd? It's amazing how many different people are in the crowd. In verse 7, it's a large crowd. In verse 9, it's because of the crowd. So you know what that tells me? Jesus is surrounded by people. Oh boy. How many of you like to go to the mall around Christmas time and just watch people? Well, if you don't want to go to the mall to watch people, go to Walmart after 10 o'clock. You'll see some people, all right. And that's what we're going to do this morning. We're just going to do some people watching from Jesus' perspective. So let's check out the crowd that was surrounding Jesus. Who were the people in that crowd? Verse 21 in Mark 3 tells us that his family was part of that crowd. Verse 7, when his family, is what it says in verse 21. So his family would have been there. And we'll talk a little bit more about his family in a bit. Verse 7, it says Jesus withdrew from with his disciples. In verse 16, we get their names. Do you like that? Simon, whom he gave the name Peter, James, the son of Zebedee, his brother John, Andrew, Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, Thomas, James, the son of Alphaeus, Thaddeus, Simon the Zealot, and Judas Iscariot. We know who they were. And they were part of that crowd. And see, these disciples were the ones that walked with Jesus. They followed Jesus for more than 3 years, and they were learning from him. And in John, we find that Jesus calls his disciples his friends. And then we got another group. Verse 2. Some of them were looking for a reason. Who's them? Well, verse 6 says that it was Pharisees. These were the smart guys in the community of believers. They were the God followers. So we're going to call them the faithful today. These are this is you, the church-going group. That's who the faithful were. So we have in that crowd that's following after Jesus now, we have the family, we've got his friends, and we've got the faithful. So let me give you my first observation this morning of Jesus and his life. Jesus' life was full of people. Jesus' life was full of people. And so is ours. You go to school with people. You go to work with people. You get online and you chat with people. No matter where you turn, there is people. People are all around us. Life is about people. God wired us. God created us to be in relationship, to be in community with people. Now, I'm going to go down a rabbit trail real quick. I believe that to be who God wants you to be, you've got to be in community with people. And the way that you get in community with people here at Southport Heights Christian Church is you join a small group. And if you're not in a small group right now, I want to challenge you to find one and get in it. Be part of a small group, because that's where life happens. Andy Steerwalt, a friend of mine here in the church, recently had an emergency surgery. And that was on Sunday night. I had dinner with him Sunday night, and the next thing I know, I get a phone call that he's heading to the hospital in an ambulance. And I just thought, holy cow. And then Monday night, he had an episode. And it just about killed him. This close to death. You know what saved Andy? Right here. Right here. Prayer. Prayer. You know who the first person to go see Andy was when he was in the hospital? Small group. The small group. They took care of him. That's what small groups do. That's where life happens. And so we see how that took place in reality. And I will tell you that Andy gives God all the praise and all the glory. But he thanks you because of the prayer that went up for him. Off my soapbox. We know lives are full of people. We understand that. But sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes in my life, the people aren't always pleasant. Do you have? And please, I'm not talking about it in my house. Don't ever spread the rumor that that's the way it is with Joan. You get me in big trouble. No, just some people aren't pleasant. And that's amazing. And that's what we're going to see here with Jesus. And that's the reason this is real life stuff. Because we're going to see that the family of Jesus, his circle of friends, and the faithful, those church-going guys, who should have had their spiritual act together, these three groups of people that were surrounding Jesus, they weren't pleasant. Let's look at this. Go back to verse 1. Back to verse 1. Another time, Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shriveled hand was there, and some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. And Jesus said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked him, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save a life or to kill?" But they remained silent. And he looked at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. And he said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." And he stretched it out. And his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees, the church people, they went out of the synagogue and began to plot with the Herodians about how they might kill Jesus. The faithful, some of y'all sitting here, can be difficult. Did you know that? Let me add on to that. I can be difficult. And that you can ask my wife. I've been here too long. These churchgoers made life difficult for Jesus, but also his friends. In verse 19, it says Judas Iscariot betrayed him, that is Jesus. It says that Peter denied him many times. And then the names of the apostles do not appear when Jesus is hanging on the cross, dying an excruciating death. They're not there. They abandoned him. These are all guys who just before the crucifixion were arguing about who's the greatest. And not a one of them stood at the cross with the exception of John. So not only are the faithful difficult, his friends were disappointing. And then we find another thing about this with his family now. Would you jump down to verse 20 with me? Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. When his family heard about this, now I just want to stop there for a moment. When his family heard, we're talking about his blood kin, right? We're talking about his siblings. And if you turn over to Mark chapter 6 just for a moment and you look at verse 3, here's the fact that you may not be aware of. When they were trying to figure out the identity of Jesus, it says in Mark chapter 6 and verse 3, isn't this the carpenter? But it gets even better. Isn't this Mary's son, the brother of James, Joseph, Judas, and Simon? And aren't his sisters here with us? Jesus had 4 brothers. The names are right there: James, Joseph, Judas, Simon. And he said he had sisters. Not a sister, it's plural. Had many sisters. Because you see in the Gospel of John in chapter 7 and verse 5 says, for even his brothers, we listed them just a minute ago, didn't believe in him. They didn't believe that Jesus was a Messiah. They were divided on that. They were not a family that was united at all. They were jealous of him. And let's put it in terminology for today. Jesus came from a dysfunctional family. Guess what I came from? And I'm going to guess that probably 80 to 90% of us sitting in this room all came from dysfunctional families. But that begs the question, what in the world is a functional family? Don't know. Anytime I try to preach a family sermon, I can't find the family in the Bible. They're all dysfunctional. It's amazing. And the reason that I love it so much is Jesus knows where I come from. He came from that dysfunctional family. I came from a dysfunctional family. He understands that. He can relate to what I'm dealing with. So, you see that Jesus' life was full of problem people. Not just people, but problem people. Is the same true of us? Are our lives full of people? Or are there some problem people in our lives? Is there dysfunction in our families that is just really ugly and it's painful? In our circle of friends, has there ever been disappointment? Has any of your friends ever hurt you badly? Or how about the faithful in the church? God forbid. Not in the church. Oh, yes, in the church. I want you to bring a person to your mind right now that is a problem person in your life. One name in your mind and hold it there for the rest of the message, because we're going to deal with that. Because as I look at Jesus on the witness stand, he's going to tell us, he's going to show us how that we are to love the people that we're stuck with. Now, please, husbands, wives, don't be elbowing each other. It's not that kind of sermon, so you're safe. But the person that's in your mind could be from your family, it could be from the circle of friends, or it could be somebody here at church. I was reading an article, golly, this has been a long time ago, when I used to read stuff from Yahoo. I don't do that much anymore. I get depressed reading that stuff. But there was this article, and it came out of Austria. And it's interesting because a young man, a grown young man, he was outside the home, but his mom kept calling and calling and calling him on his phone. 2.5 years. And as a matter of fact, the article said that she had called him as many as 49 times in one day. Is that a helicopter parent? Oh my goodness. You know what the guy did? The young man, he served, how do you want to say this? He put stalking charges on her. He called the police and said, my mom's stalking me. How many of you could call the police on your mom and say that she's stalking you? She had to go to court. She went before the judge. The judge found her guilty of stalking. And so she was fined 360 euros, or in American dollars, that's about 475. And she said before the court, I just wanted to talk to my son. Okay. I just wanted to see my grandchildren. Okay. But 49 times in one day? It's ridiculous. But you know, that's just one simple example of so many of that difficult person in our life. His was his family. It was a dysfunctional family member. With you, it might be a disappointing friend, or maybe it's someone here in the church. Put that person in your mind, though, and keep them there. I want to go back in the book of Mark. Go do a little more people watching here. And then we're going to go see how Jesus dealt with these problem people. Verse 2. Some of them, the faithful, were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. And that word and that tense for the idea of watching was 24-hour-a-day surveillance. That's what it amounted to. 3 shifts, Pharisees, watching Jesus wherever he went, whenever he went. That's what they were about. They were on a fault-finding mission. Problem people in our lives are fault-finding people. They're looking for faults in your life. They're not looking to bless you. You ever feel like somebody just watching you? You know, they're just looking over your shoulder. They're looking through their spy glasses, their binoculars, or they got you under the microscope, just making sure that you do everything you're supposed to do. That might be the person in your mind right now. Verse 5. He looked around at them, these faithful, and he looked at them in anger and deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts. Now that word stubborn in the Greek means petrified. Anybody been to the petrified forest? Nobody been there? Oh, there we go. Yeah, we got a couple. The petrified forest is wood that is turned to stone. And it's a very hard stone. So what Jesus is saying here, the problem people have hard hearts. They have hard hearts. They have closed minds. And then in verse 6 it says, then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians about how they might kill Jesus. These hard-hearted, fault-finding spiritual leaders, the faithful, became vengeful. They wanted revenge. And you got to love this, because what happens is they're trying to catch Jesus and he one-ups them, right? He's in the synagogue and the guy comes with a shriveled hand, and what's Jesus do? He heals them. They didn't know what to do. They were at a loss. They had this vengeful spirit and they wanted to get revenge, but Jesus didn't allow them. These guys were jealous. They were embittered toward him. So they were wanting their revenge. So problem people who are fault-finding, hard-hearted, become very vengeful. Very vengeful people. In verse 19 again, Judas Iscariot, who betrayed Jesus. I said this earlier, Judas betrayed him, Peter denied him, and other guys abandoned him. In other words, they were unfaithful. Problem people are unfaithful. They don't keep promises. They don't fulfill their commitments. They just walk out. Ever happened to you? Friend in your life that just disappeared, just walked out of that relationship. They didn't want to be around you anymore. Did it hurt? Yeah. Think about that. Verse 20. Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered so that he and his disciples were not able to even eat. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him. Oh, I love this. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall when this was happening, because the family went to take charge of Jesus. Now, I just want to kind of peek around the corner. Since I couldn't be a fly on the wall, I'm going to peek around the corner a little bit. And we're going to look at that phrase, take charge of him. How old was Jesus at this time? He was baptized at 30, right? So he's in his ministry. So he's got to be 30, 31, 32. He's in his early 30s. He's 30-something when his family came to take control of him. Problem people are controlling. They want to call all the shots. They're manipulative. They want to be in charge. No one else really matters. I like verse 21. They said, he is out of his mind. Now look at the grammar of that. Think about it with me. They didn't say, you are out of your mind. They said, he is out of his mind. What's that tell you? They're talking behind his back. They weren't talking to him. They were talking about him. So we need to understand that problem people tend to be slanderous. Is that person you got in your mind right now? They ever spoken behind your back? They would say something behind your back that they'd never say to your face. Well, here's another observation I found reading this, looking at it from the overview, is that Jesus' life was full of pain caused by problem people. Can you say, been there, done that, and I got the t-shirt? Because in every one of our lives, the problem people in our lives have caused us pain. That's the reason I believe this is so real for today. Because Jesus went through the same thing. He's no different than what we are. This speaks into our everyday lives. So Jesus, as you're sitting there on the witness stand, how did you deal with these people? Why didn't you just wave your hand and cause them all to disappear into oblivion? You know that do not pass go, do not collect $200 thing? He could have done that, but he didn't. Why didn't he just make them disappear? He wasn't a magician. He was and still is our Savior. You see, Jesus loved those people. He came so that they could have life, all of them, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Praise God. He came for all of them. No matter how difficult, no matter how disappointing, no matter how dysfunctional, Jesus came because of his love for them. We are them. Do you understand that? We are the dysfunctional. We are the disappointing, and we are the difficult. And he came for us because of his love for us. So the truth, do I have to love people I'm stuck with? Jesus, is that truth? Do I have to do that? Remember, things are caught more than they're taught. So look at verse 7. Here's Jesus speaking to us through his actions. Jesus withdrew with his disciples to the lake, and a large crowd from Galilee followed. He withdrew to the lake. Why did he go to the lake? Why do you go to the lake? You know, why do you try to get away for that 3-day weekend? You think Jesus was any different than us? He just was trying to get away. Maybe one of those disciples had this beautiful condo on Lake Galilee, or Sea of Galilee, and beautiful view out over the lake. You know, maybe they loaned it to him for a couple days just so he could get away and rest. He was just trying to take a break, but people wouldn't let him. They wouldn't leave him alone. He just needed some downtime. No different than you and me. Just some downtime. But you know what happened with Jesus? One person sees Jesus starting to walk away. Hey, there he goes, there he goes. And before long, you hear 4 or 5 people, there he goes, there he goes. And what happens? The mob mentality sets in. And they all begin to follow Jesus to the lake. Now, here's the interesting part. When they all gather around him, he didn't shut the door. He didn't say, hey, talk to the hand. He ministered to their needs. He didn't shut any windows. He welcomed them into his life. And the same thing in verse 20. He entered the house. Why'd he go in? To get something to eat. My kind of guy. Right? He was hungry. He went into the house, and again, the crowd gathered. It was so many people there that he and his disciples couldn't even eat. And when they came in, what did he do? He put his own needs aside. The need for food, he put it aside, and he started ministering to the needs of the people. Problem people. So here's how Mr. Jesus handled it. He cared. He cared. And he would want you and I to care about the one right now that we have in our mind. See, there's a word in the New Testament, it's splagna. It's an anatomical term, and it means bow. Well, the word splagnathes means compassion. Jesus had compassion. Not some trite little feeling, fuzzy feeling. No. He had compassion. He cared. Even for me and you, the problem people. The question would be, do we do the same? As disciples of Jesus Christ, do we do the same? Do we look like Jesus when it comes to this part of our life? Do we care for people? Do we put our needs aside because we're dealing with problem people? We need to have a big heart. Not anatomically, not an enlarged heart physically, but we need to have an enlarged heart spiritually and emotionally for the people around us, and in particular for the person that you have in your mind right now. We care. We care. And if we do that, let's look at the next thing that Jesus did. You notice there in verse 4 that he gets up in that synagogue in front of those faithful guys and he poses a very pointed question. Which is lawful on the Sabbath to do? To do good or to do evil? To save life or to kill it? I would again love to have been right there, because I don't think Jesus was standing back against a wall talking to a group of people that was way out in the middle of the courtyard. I think he was right in their faces. And he's saying, whoa, time out. Look at down in verse 22. The teachers of the law came down from Jerusalem. Look what they were saying about Jesus. He is possessed by Beelzebub, by the prince of demons. He's driving out demons. Did they need confronted? Look what Jesus did in verse 23. He started teaching. He didn't put up his hand and say, talk to it. He didn't walk away from them. He called them to his side so that he could teach them the truth. He cared enough to confront. I would say in our culture today, we don't do a lot of that because we're afraid to offend. But we need to confront lies. We need to confront sin. And we need to do it boldly, just like Jesus did. Notice in verse 31, Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. They were outside the house where Jesus was trying to get something to eat. It didn't work. And they were standing outside. They sent someone in to call on him. There's a crowd there. Remember, they went to take charge of him because they thought he was crazy. Well, That's a dysfunctional family, folks. Verse 32, a crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, hey, your mother and your brother's outside looking for you. Look at his response. Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. Then he looked at those seated in the circle around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and sister and mother. Think about this. He looked at the people that were sitting around him. Who was sitting around him? Peter, who's going to deny him. Judas, who's going to betray him. The rest of the disciples that were sitting there were all the ones that were going to abandon him when it came to the crucifixion. The same disciples who would argue who would be the greatest. They're all sitting there among him and around him. And those were problem people. But he didn't abandon them. He cared enough to connect with them. He cared enough to connect. He welcomed them. He accepted them into his life in hopes of engaging them so that they would change. He didn't walk away. Any of you ever use duct tape? I love duct tape. Do you know they used to use that my friend used to use that to wrap the mouths of alligators when he caught them. But then they started putting those tearing lines in them. And those alligators were going, whoop. There went this duct tape. Do you know the duct tape it comes in many colors? You can get whatever color you want of duct tape. And there's also this thing called ductivities that are available online. You know, we have activities. Well, they have ductivities. Every day is a different ductivity that you can participate. I've not joined it yet, but think about that. Why do you use duct tape? You're holding something together, aren't you? You're holding something together. Now, I think each and every one of us need to have a belt on with a clip on it that can hold some duct tape. You can have whatever color you want to match whatever outfit you're wearing that day. But I think we need to have that duct tape. Because there are times that we're not going to see eye to eye. And when I'm not seeing eye to eye with you, Ron, if I'm not seeing eye to eye with you, I'm going to ask your wife to tape you and me together so we can't get away from each other. Because it's a whole lot easier to turn and run than it is to face the problem. And the big thing is we don't want to admit that we might be the problem. And so we got to be duct taped together so we can't get away. We got to stick it out with each other. We need to have holy duct tape holding us together. You see, in this scenario we're looking at, Jesus did not walk away from them. They walked out on him. He didn't walk out on them. There's no movie star. Some of you may remember Charlie Chaplin. You know who he is? Now, I'm old. I did not know him personally. Okay? But Charlie Chaplin. You got a picture of him? Yep. That's him. He became the beloved actor in the silent film era. He won America's heart. And all across America, there were Charlie Chaplin lookalike contests. And as a matter of fact, there's a young comedian, some of you may know this name, Bob Hope. He entered one of those contests. Well, here's what's great. Charlie Chaplin himself entered a contest secretly in San Francisco. He entered that contest. He did not even make it to the finals. You know what? If you and I had a look-alike contest today with Jesus, right now, I'd venture to say that we probably would have a very good chance of not making it to the finals. Because I think there are times in our lives that we don't look anything like Jesus. And I think this is one area in which that is true. It's how we deal with the problem people in our lives. Jesus demonstrated for us how we need to deal with problem people that we have in our lives. Here's the question. Jesus, do I have to love the people I'm stuck with? Jesus' response, can you hear it? No, you get to love the people you're stuck with. You don't have to, you get to. It's incredible. After looking at his life, understanding that more is caught than taught, I can just see him in his final answer standing up, just like it did in the movie A Few Good Men, when he said, you can't handle the truth. Jesus said, you better handle the truth. We need to see ourselves as problem people. I love the verse of don't try to take the plank out of your brother's eye until you take the speck out of yours. If any of you wear contacts, do you know how bad a speck can be in your eye? It's crazy. It's like being in a tent by yourself and there's one mosquito. He drives you crazy. This is what it's like. Get the speck out of your own eye before you try to remove the plank in your brother's. And listen, we will never, ever, ever be able to deal with the relationship that we have in our mind right now until we surrender that to Jesus. And that will never happen until we surrender our lives to the lordship of Jesus. Folks, that's why every week we offer the opportunity for you to accept Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior and to be baptized, to receive that gift that he offers, to receive the freedom from sin and the gift of the Holy Ghost.